Hello, Terri Friedman. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Well, hello, Kathy, and thank you for inviting me.
It's such an honor. Terri, you're an internationally recognized artist, and your art is amazing. It's so cool. And I just want to hear about how you became what you became in terms of your work and what led you to it.
What led me? Well, I think formative years are obviously really important. And I grew up with an artist mom who would kind of take me to her. She was very young. And so she was always in school. Like she took me to her welding class and she was taking art classes at the community college. And this is in Denver. Then she later became an interior designer. And so she had me going to life drawing of naked figures in like fifth grade. And with her, we were both drawing naked women. And she was very just super artistic and really pretty much she wanted to be an artist and became a designer. And so her design is very colorful and eccentric. And I think that influenced it. And then, other things too. But I think that was the main influence.
So, and that was always a passion for you and you just followed it.
It was. I think I had my left and right brains were pretty strong. And so I kind of had a very rational, like I loved math and academics. And I just thought that art was a hobby and that it was really fun. And in my senior year in high school, I was on an outward bound rafting trip and my art teacher and my mom submitted my art portfolio to this Colorado Scholastic Art Contest and I won first prize. And it was like a 4-year scholarship to California College of Arts where I'm teaching now, which is so funny.
You're a professor there now, right? Of art?
I'm a professor there now, but I turned it down because I just thought I couldn't do art school, which probably was the right decision, but I just thought I wanted to be a lawyer. So, I didn't really, that's what my dad wanted me to be. So he was not a lawyer. He had a grocery store, but he wanted me to be like his grandfather who was a lawyer. So, yeah.
But you just decided to go ahead and follow it. And I know your career has not been linear. What has helped you continue to follow your passion with your work?
That's a really good question. And I teach college students, and it's really interesting how so few of them become artists and in art school. But I think they have very artful lives and they make art their whole lives, but it's not necessarily their career or passion. I think what really was a pivotal point in my life was I took a year off from college and my professor was like, you should intern an artist while you're taking time off. And I ended up taking a lot of art classes. I hadn't declared art major yet. And so I thought, well, there's no artists in Denver. They all make howling dogs. It was like Santa Fe, Denver art. And there's nobody I was really interested in. And also I had done a summer program before high school at the Rhode Island School of Design. So, I mean, I was very much driven by art, but I didn't think it could be a career. And then when I took the year off, I interned for an artist, Charles Simmons, who was having a retrospective at the Guggenheim. And then I think it was a little bit of fantasy that like at age 40, I could have a retrospective at the Guggenheim that kind of propelled me. But whatever propels you, I think it's fine. If it's whatever it is, it's a future vision or fantasy. And so I worked with him for 6 months making and installing this huge installation. And I was like, this is really exciting and I can do this. So it was a little naive, but it was also, maybe that's what it takes. I was 20 years old interning this artist. And I was like, oh, that's what I want. Mm-hmm. Then you think backwards, how am I going to get there? That was a pivotal point for me.
There's this attitude that people can't make a living doing something they love with some people. What would you say to that?
I'd say yes and no. And this is something that I've learned watching my students and seeing who is successful and who isn't over 30 years of teaching college. There's a lot of variables. So I couldn't say to you right now, I want to be a famous woman vocalist, indie artist, because I don't have a voice. Like I can't.
Exactly. You don't have that talent. Like I would say the same thing. I could say I want to be an opera star, but I can't sing.
But I do think there is a secret sauce. I think there is a secret sauce. I think you have to want it really badly. And that's what I see with my students. Like there's students who just don't want it. And I'm like, if you don't want, like, I'm not sure it's all talent, honestly, because there's a lot of very untalented musicians and artists who are very famous and recognized and doing very well in their careers. So, oh gosh, there's like several, I'm going to go all over the place. So there's like, you have to want it. That doesn't preclude being an artist your whole life and enjoying the practice and enjoying getting tremendous satisfaction out of art. But you asked me like how to succeed. I think I was always driven. I wanted it so badly. And I think I had talent. I'm not uber talented. I think I just had some gift or some talent. And I think I just had a lot of just for whatever ego, whatever drove it, I wanted it really badly.
So, but I think that correlates, right? Often when we want,
you have to work really hard. That's the other secret sauce. I can tell from my students, the ones who work really hard are going to go places.
I love it. So you have to put in the work and you have to really want it. But the other thing too, I'm hearing you have to have some talent, but quite often my experience in my own life and the clients I've worked with, if you really want something and you love it, it's likely because you are good at it. So to follow that thread of if you're good at something, there's something there.
But the thing with art is it's really subjective. And I know stories of people who were financial, investors, or I don't know, like bank, whatever, money people. And they just decided, I want to be an artist, and they became very, very, like Jeff Koons, they became very famous and successful because they're just savvy. Like they knew how to work the system, and they knew there's a lot of like art is a business, right? So I think that's the fantasy the sad thing is I see super talented students who go nowhere because they have and they work hard, but they also they don't know how. That's why coaches are so good, because they don't know how to work the system or how to navigate the external world. So it's like internal, external. It's like both areas. Yeah.
Right. It's like having a mentor, right? And anything you want to do, right? I mean, even when I worked as a lawyer, like it wasn't law school, it wasn't all those things. When I got some mentoring on like how to try a case, or like that was what was so helpful. And the business piece. So I think for artists especially, right, even super talented, you still need that mentorship is my hunch. And that's what I hear you saying.
And nowadays, a lot of it is social media. Like my students or the people more recently I've worked with who are doing very well really have a social media presence. Like they know how to navigate the system of self-promotion, but they're also really good and they work really hard.
Yeah. Okay.
But they're not any better necessarily than other people. They're very good, very competent. They work really hard. And then they actually become really good. They become talented. They become like through that hard work. I think the work gets really strong.
That's interesting too, right? Your craft, the more time you spend on it, the better you get. And if you're fueling it. What would you say to people I love Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist's Way. I don't know if you've read that book.
It's a beautiful book. Yeah.
It's so good. But this idea that, we're all artists in our lives. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I spent time in Bali and everyone was an artist, and it was so exciting to have like everybody, a craftsperson or an artist. And like Michelle Obama's taken up knitting, like that's an art form. And Peggy Ornstein wrote a book on knitting or something. I don't know. So I think, I think everyone is artful, like whether it's their cooking or their interiors or the way they dress. My kids are really into fashion. I'm not, but very fashionable. So is my mom. It missed me.
You look very hip.
I'm not. But not everyone explores that realm, but I think it's a very healthy realm to explore. Like no matter what you do, if you're a lawyer or doctor, like to have cooking or gardening or art, I think is a very good for your soul,
Yes. And I think it activates different parts of our brain. It helps us. It's so interesting. I think it helps us figure out other problems when we're immersed in some sort of project, whether it's cooking or something we love to do.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of us can get stuck at times and just being like, I'm this, and this is what I do. But yet hobbies can be really, really helpful for our health and our wellness, and also lead to more meaning in our lives.
I think so. And really good stress releases like knitting and cooking and gardening and music. I think it's really has so many healing properties. That's why I think everyone should be an artist. I think a career artist is a very different, pursuit, but everyone, I think if you love art or whatever you love, I think it's really important to save time for that weekly or daily. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I want to talk about some of your pieces, the names of your pieces, which are so fun and fascinating. Like you have a piece called Hello Uncertainty.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about that, about your titles and how you come up with them?
Yes. I mean, that came from my cognitive behavioral therapist. Hello uncertainty, like she just always says hello uncertainty, or like you don't get to know, or like, and I
embracing uncertainty, man. It's a key to life.
It is the key to life. And so, yeah. And then I know we had talked earlier about my interest in Buddhism, like that's about uncertainty, right? Like it's just about navigating, not knowing the future and being kind of in the present. So yeah, I think that there's, the titles are really important to me. And I used to get titles from a friend who's Dutch, who lives in Amsterdam, and he and I collaborated together in the 90s. And he is such a just spinner of great titles and words. So I'd often just show him the work, and then he'd be like, "Here's your title." So I collect titles. Like I read Anne Lamott's books, or I'll read a book and I get really inspired and I write down titles.
I love it.
Or a Dylan song, like.
Yeah. And I think it was that piece, or I read maybe in your Instagram, but it's about holding loss and grief with joy. Could you say more about that?
Yeah, I think it's, speaking of, I just last year finished, is it Susan Cain's bittersweet book? She wrote Quiet and stuff. So a lot of I think this notion of bittersweet has been a thread through my work for a long time. And so my work, I use metaphors like dirty dazzle or sickly sweet or grateful dread. That was my favorite one. So when I'm working, I have these disparities in my head because I think like my daily practice, or all of our practice, especially as we age, as we're over 50, when our lives get really complex, with kids with issues and parents with issues and spouses with issues, and we have issues, whether it be health or wellness or mental health. This idea that life is holding the bitter and the sweet, life is grief and joy. That is my daily practice. Like how, despite all my stress and all the hardship, do I find moments of joy or elevate my emotions? And yeah.
So how do you do that? Any tips you want to share that are helpful to you?
Yeah, I mean, my Buddhist meditation, like being in the moment. I would say the most recent profound tip I have is the Annie Hopper, this woman in Canada, founded this organization, DNRS, Dynamic Neural Rewiring System, I think it is, about kind of it's a brain training system. And I worked with her 5 years ago when I had a chronic Lyme diagnosis, because my functional doctor thought she's really good for these idiopathic conditions. So for all of you who have like Epstein-Barr, fibromyalgia, or like chronic, chemical sensitivities, it really works. People really heal from these things by rewiring their brain. So one of the 5 pillars, one of them is elevating your mood throughout the day. So taking breaks and listening to good music, looking up into the sky or out at the garden, or like we're up in the hills so I can look at the Golden Gate and the bay, which is beautiful. And we're in L Street on San Francisco Bay Area. So to do these tricking your brain throughout the day to feel joy, it's actually exercises. It's like brain exercises, but they're very simple. They're very much like things we all know, or feeling grateful, a gratitude journal, or calling your mom, or, yeah.
I love the research on, there's lots of it, just taking the time to foster positive emotions can have a huge benefit to our health and well-being. I think there was a study that showed that, the patients who took that time to actually foster joy or well-being, they did better in terms of like their illness, in terms of their receptivity to whatever drugs they were taking. And it makes sense just from a practical standpoint. When we elevate our mood, our feel-good hormones go up and all of that. So we're not a victim to our circumstances all the time. And that's what you're saying.
No. And that's like, now there's science to back that, there's like research, which is kind of exciting. And then the whole epigenetics field, that we're not our genes, that we can, like our lifestyle and our joy and the things. I mean, I don't want to be naive. We also have bad experience, like there's also life gives us big punches that we have no control over, but we do have the epigenetics. I love that, the 80-20 rule, like we have control over it much more than we think we do.
1,000%. Absolutely. We don't control everything, but there are things, we can control what we put in our bodies, what we think about, how, how we exercise, how we respond to things. Those are all things within our control. And no, can we prevent everything? No, but if we do that piece, it's going to help everything.
Yes. I mean, isn't how you respond is the biggest, like that's hard. When you feel like a victim or things are really hard, that like how you respond, it's like, you don't want to know you have a choice. You want to be,
Yeah. I think that's another key to life.
Yeah.
How we respond. I mean, and I think that's where I think Buddhism probably helps you is my guess, but any kind of mindfulness practice, just taking a moment to step back and realizing you always have a choice on how you respond to something, I think is a powerful practice.
The mindset or it's interesting when bringing it back to like, since I know you're a coach, like career and actualizing dreams and kind of manifesting. I do think like I'm working with my son who's 20 and applying for internships and getting either, ghosting, like no response or rejections. And it's really hard. And it's really, he wants to say, oh, well, all the tech businesses are laying off. There's just no room for me right now. And so it's like we had a talk like, well, your mindset's really important. Like, and so like, as far as career, getting rejections, I've had a lot of rejections. I've had so many rejections in my life. And so how do you move forward with rejections,
And how do you do that? I mean, you've had a lot of rejections with your art. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, yes. Oh my God.
I love that. Not that I love that for you, but
Yeah.
I think people, and I do too, sometimes I look at somebody and it's like, oh my God, they're so successful. How, but no, usually the path to success is filled with a lot of no's, or they don't like you, or, they're rejecting it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that actually, I hadn't thought of this topic before, but yeah, it's really important because just the cognitive behavioral therapy are just like feeling the disappointment, and also self-compassion or self-care. Like, okay, you just put yourself out and you emailed, 40 people and you heard back from one. And it's like, I'm at this point in my career and I get people don't respond, and you think like, wow. And it's not even like not taking it personally because it feels personal, but it's like taking a break. You do it, you put yourself out there and then you pull back and you you hike and walk and go back to my solution to those, going back into my studio and making more work.
I love it. So it's like that, the art kind of soothes you, or just is like, try again, but
don't stop working, keep making the work. And that's like an affirmation in yourself. Like, okay, this is really about my practice and my work. And these people are, they're not important to that process.
Yes.
I'm not going to give them my power.
Yes. And the other thing too is always, I find helpful, is just, you don't know what's going on in their lives, and right. And so just to have that, like, you don't know. And I always like to remember the mantra that everyone has a struggle you don't know about. So you don't know, they may be, and it has nothing to do with you.
No, and that's the tenacity too. I think you also don't give up on them, because I've had experiences where people won't respond over 3-4 years, and then they'll be like, can I do a studio visit? And you're like, I never heard from you before. So people are busy and they have their own lives, and we don't get to know what's going on in someone's mind, right? So like I had a really great experience. So this kind of answer to one of your questions. At midlife, I was like, okay, I need to reinvent myself. I started working with a coach. I think it was when I turned 50, or like my late 40s. And then I started taking a weaving class, and I was like, this is really exciting. I love this. And my coach was like, that's kind of a tiny, shiny, let's stay on what your work is. That's just a side. But it became bigger and bigger. And I was like, no, actually, this is becoming my work. And it was kind of hard. And then I was weaving for 2 years before I showed anybody. And then I invited the director of the Berkeley Art Museum over, and he came to my studio, and he was very quiet. And he was like, wow, this is really, okay. And then he left, and I thought, oh, he didn't like the work, right? I just thought that's a rejection. Literally, like the 2 days later, he called and said, we want to buy one for the museum. Which one should we buy? It didn't end there. And then he emailed me a month later and said, they have this huge 60 by 20 foot art wall. And he's like, would you like to do the next art wall, do a big weaving? And so here I interpreted his quietness and as like rejection, and he hates me, and he hated the work. And so you never know what people are thinking, ever.
You never know. And I like how I think when you got that call about to do the Berkeley art wall, which is a massive project, your first response was no.
No, you're right. Oh my God. I was like, I cannot in 4 months. It takes me a month to do this little weaving. How am I going to do a 60-foot wall? And my husband was like, just yes, and you'll figure it out.
And I love that attitude, right? Saying, you said yes and you'll figure it out, and you did. And now it's up there.
Yeah.
That is so cool. How would you say your work differs from some of your male colleagues in the art world?
That, it's funny. Okay, you and I can talk about this because we're similar ages, but my daughter would have such a hard time with that. Like, oh, you can't genderize anything. Like, that's ridiculous. But I actually agree with you. And I think, like, I would say maybe it's my age and my gender. I don't know. I would say two things. It's funny because when I started making this work, it was much hairier. It was really like sensual and hairy and crazy weavings. And now they're a little bit more tapestry-like. But I remember showing them to a friend who's an art writer in LA. And he was like, oh my God, they're just too hairy. Like, he did not like them. And when I told some women friends of mine, they're like, oh my God, he doesn't like sensuality, and like that female, giving birth is messy. And he told me to look at some tapestry artists, some fiber artists who made really clean conceptual work. And I'm like, that is not what I'm doing. I'm making sensual color. So that's different. And then the other thing is the way I work. There's kind of a traditional masculine way of working, which is in the art world, which is, big paintings, all the same in a show, like 10 variations on a theme, all the same. That's kind of a traditional white male way of working. But I think for people of color, women, often it's more relational. Like they're a little more risky, a little more daring. So sense too. Like each piece is a little different sizes, so yeah, it's different.
Right.
I think it is different.
It is, yeah.
Some men work that way too, but it is a kind of a more of a woman's way of working.
And this is, of course, my question is not for all male artists, of course, but just kind of in general, the differences you've noticed, which I think are powerful and just interesting.
Again, I probably would get into trouble for just having said that, but it's like, because to genderize things is probably unfair, but I do think that maybe it's a generational thing that today people might have different experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. What about confidence? Have you dealt with imposter syndrome at all?
I haven't so much.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why not.
I love it because most people I talk to, many of my clients, even very successful people, at some point feel not confident about something or, feel like an imposter. So I love that you haven't. That's fantastic. What do you think that is? I might
go the opposite way. If I'm being totally honest, I might feel like I'm not getting enough attention. My work is really good. So I don't know. That's probably not so good either. That's probably a little ego, like whatever.
Oh my God. No, we need more women in general, I think, to say my work's amazing and you should look at it.
Yeah. So I think I feel more, but it kind of leads into a little victim scenario of like, I'm a middle-aged woman and these young people are getting some more attention and my work's better, so that's probably not so healthy or helpful, but if I'm being honest, that's where I'm trying to think of the imposter.
How about dealing with perfectionism? Have you struggled with that at all?
I struggle with self-criticism, but I think that's different. My work is about the imperfect. So I think I'm very much could be more perfect in my work. I think I struggle with for many, many years, just like putting stuff out too quickly and maybe not, in the past, feeling insecure that it's not so perfected.
I would say that has a bit of perfectionism and
maybe it does. Yeah.
And the self-criticism, I think that's
self-criticism probably is perfectionism. That's true. Okay.
Yeah. So what helps you with dealing with self-criticism?
I'd say probably the most important thing is reaching out to friends. I have good friends who are in the art world. One of my closest friends is an artist, lives in New Jersey, and I have a very good friend here who's chair painting at my school, and we talk every Monday. Or if things come up during the week, I'll call her and she's actually a coach too, and just kind of, get reassured that like, I'm okay. I don't know. It's sometimes I need a person or my husband, someone to say like, you know what, it's okay. Let it go. Like sometimes I can't do it alone.
Yeah. Well, I think anytime you have community around your gifts, it's a wonderful thing. And to be able to say, hey, think of all the great things you've done, to remind yourself, I think is very, very powerful and helps with that inner critic that I think all of us have.
Right. It's or the self-compassion work, the Christine Neff work, like I'll put my hand on my heart and I'll be like,
yes.
Like, this is really hard for you, Terri. Like, maybe, you're okay the way you are. Like, I'll have to do a little self-compassion.
Yes. I just did my first mini episode. It was all about self-compassion because I so believe it can change the world. And when we take that time to really talk to ourselves like a friend.
Yeah, it certainly changes me. Like, I feel like I can be very hard on myself. So that probably is perfectionism. Yeah.
Yeah. Your piece on flourishing instead of just surviving. Yeah. Can you talk about that?
I've been thinking a lot about, that's kind of an aesthetic. It's a personal, but it's also this, my work is very joyful and it's very exuberant. And sometimes I want to tone it down because I feel too exposed or vulnerable, making really happy work when the world's falling apart, including my life, when things are so hard. Like, why am I making work that's so happy? And so that's where it comes from. And it was just like, so my next show is going to be a lot about how to flourish even when things are falling apart. Like how to, like this idea of, the people I admire the most are the people who've been through a lot and then just have the joie de vivre, like just this love of life. And so, yeah, I'm really interested in art that is about flourishing. Also because I just from a very personal, spiritual point of view, I want to put objects into the world that are healing and repairing and make people feel good when they're in your home. So people have said when they put the work up, they walk by and they smile, like they feel really just happy. And that's actually my main purpose with my work, is I want people to hang it in if they're going to purchase it and hang it in their homes, I want them to feel really, I want it to be a reminder of joy. Yeah.
Right. And also it sounds like it's not an either or thing. You can feel, which is important, grief, loss, and still find joy, still love parts of your life. It's not either or. I mean, this general idea of just always being happy, that's BS. Nobody is all the time.
I've been really, the last years, really kind of obsessed and interested in octogenarians and like my mom, or people who've lost husbands, like my husband's aunt, who've lost husbands and lost family members and lost kids. And yet when you talk to them, they're so joyful, and like they can barely move. They have a walker, or I just feel like, how do you like, and your life is limited, like you're in your 80s, like, and like you don't have much more time. How are they so happy? Like, how are they so joyful and so like, till the very end?
I love it. It's an inside job because we know it's not about having X amount of money or getting this or getting that. I mean, I know lots of people who are super wealthy or they have all the accolades and yet they're very unhappy.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it's finding those things that do bring you joy and fostering those things.
Yeah, exactly.
What would your 95-year-old self tell you today?
I think you can do it. You can do it. And she would also say, like, just breathe and relax. It's all fine. There'd be a kind of message of ease and trust. You're going to be fine. It's all going to work out. Have your focus be bigger and not so myopic, not so like, focused on like, oh, this pain or my sciatica or like, or my children, the things that are wrong with them, but kind of on the greater, or on climate change. Like, don't like try to think bigger. I don't know. Yeah. But I think mainly ease and trust. And also you can do it. You can do it, Yeah.
I love it. Anytime you can bring ease into anything, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Which I don't do. Yeah. I try to, but yeah.
We're all works in progress.
Yeah.
What would you tell your 7-year-old self today?
I think maybe not my 7-year-old self, but my definitely middle school self, high school is I think I would say several things. You're unstoppable. You can do it. Same thing. But I would also say you are beautiful just the way you are. You do not need to change. You are just beautiful wherever you are. And your body and yourself and your mind and your beauty, and that like you don't need other people to tell you that, like you can know from inside. I think that's what I'd say.
Beautiful. What is the message you want to give to your children? What life lesson would you want to impart on them the most?
It's funny, out of fear. Okay. My fear message, which is not, would be like, how can I say it? Like, eat well and exercise and take care of yourself and, don't do drugs and meditate and see a therapist, like all that stuff that I like cling on to that I think they need. So that's all good messages, right? But I think the deeper message might be that, just kind of go where the love is, love yourself, and it's all going to work out. And it's okay to be rejected, and it's okay to be fat, or to be, like, it's okay to be these things, that like you're still loved and beloved, like with all your, I think that's what I'd say. Cause but the first, it's funny when you ask me, like the first thing would be like, oh, be healthy. But I think that's a trap sometimes. I don't know.
Well, I think it's anytime, I know with my kids, where I feel like I'm in lecture mode, it goes out the other ear.
And also, I don't think it's helpful. I don't think,
Right.
I mean, we can model it. Like, it's like, just keep doing my path and do my thing. And they can see that I like meditation. I like to eat whole foods. They can see what I'm doing, but I don't, no lecturing. Like,
Yeah.
and I lecture. I'm very guilty. I am really trying to back away. Yeah.
You're not alone, but yes, same thing. I noticed for myself with my kids, the more I can back off and just be like, it's your choice, and here's what's helpful, here's what's not. You want to eat that. It's a lot of, bad chemicals, but it's your choice. It's going to make you feel bad later, but it's up to you. I feel like that line is more helpful than saying, don't do that.
In fact, I think the don't do it can create more problems.
Yes.
It can create more, like, and they've said this, like with eating disorders and things.
I don't know who said this, but I think it's so true. If we can be, more like compassionate witnesses with our children and coaches opposed to, dictators, I think it's a gift to our kids, of course have boundaries, but.
And also to remember that their brains are not developed till they're 25. So like it's going to be rocky, just like it was for all of us. Like, it's going to be kind of rocky. And then they all seem to get their acts together in their 20s and 30s. Like, they all often come around. We all did,
Yeah.
Kind of.
It all depends. We're always throwing new things, and it's all about what tools help us.
Yeah, exactly.
What exciting work are you working on right now that you want to share?
I am in a show that, this is my most exciting thing right now, is that the shippers just came this morning to pick up 4 pieces I really love that are going to be in a 4-person show in Los Angeles during Frieze Art Week at Phillips Gallery. Phillips is an auction house, it's like Sotheby's, Phillips Sotheby's. And they've opened a gallery in the front of their auction house in West Hollywood. And it's 4 artists. We all received this Artadia grant, which is a national grant that goes to 6 different cities, 2 artists every year. So we all received it within the last 2 years. And I'm super excited because they're all in their 30s. And then there's me. And I love being with young people, and there's more diversity. Like, it's not just I'm the only white artist. I like this dialogue. I don't want to be with middle-aged artists. So I'm really excited about that. And also excited because it's okay when we're talking about career. It's the first time here I am at this age, not the first time, but it's maybe 1 or 2 other times in my life has this happened, where they sent me a plane ticket. They're putting me up in a nice hotel for 2 nights, and they gave me a ticket to the VIP showing of Frieze on Thursday, which is really just museum directors and curators, and mostly artists go on Saturday and Sunday. So they gave me this VIP entrance, and it's so nice to be treated like a queen. And, so anyway, my husband's coming with me. It's like, normally I have to get myself there and stay with friends, on their couch. And this is really, so I feel like I'm just taking it in right now, Kathy.
I love it. You are a queen, and to own it.
Oh my God. I'm just taking in that I'm being this gratitude for they are treating me so beautifully. Every artist all the time should be treated like this. And, granted, they have the resources because they're an auction house, but it's really, really nice. Yeah.
That's exciting. I did want to ask you, you did a piece as well for Facebook that was a pretty big deal. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was the virtual reality building. I did the entry lobby wall. There's a big wall there that was like what was it, like 40 by 20 or something. Yeah, so I finished that a year ago. I think I installed actually in the fall of 2021. Yeah. And that was exciting. They contacted me. They have this Meta Arts program, which is like an artist residence. Many artists have done it. And I was excited to do a big woven tapestry. And it was when Facebook was going through a lot of this misinformation and kind of I felt very, I know this was part of my the textile art council I talked about. It was very hard. I was like, can I do this? It didn't feel ethical. Like, should I do this? And I thought, I want the opportunity, and they're willing to pay what I want. And so it was just all around a really positive experience. Yeah.
I love the title of it. Tell us what you titled it and why.
So I was going to put in like Pravda, which is Russian for truth. And I was going to really it was going to be an accusation, kind of stab towards Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. And then I thought, what kind of spirit is that? Like, there's people who work in this company who are like me and you. And so I decided that I'm really interested in prepositions and the idea that they're connective. So I picked the word with, and I made it's really big with on the wall, but it's camouflaged into the piece. And I wanted it to be really about equity and inclusion. This idea that Facebook, you're not a solo flyer, like you have to take us with you, meaning everyone in the world. Take the world with you. You're not, what you do matters, and that you have to consider us. And then it was also on a smaller level, like for the people who worked in the virtual reality building, when they would walk in. I love the idea. I love that the curator had a weaving on the virtual reality lobby, because what's the opposite of virtual reality? It's like this tactile textiles. So anyway, it says with. And so the idea that maybe they should take each other into consideration too, that you're there with your colleagues and care for each other. It's about caring.
I love it, because it's like you just decided to go so much more positive and hopeful and kind of the highest good. And that seems like so much of all of what your work is about.
Exactly. And I think it didn't feel right to be snarky. I just felt like that's not what I'm about. I really want the work to be about gratitude and what our best good and flourishing. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else we haven't covered that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I don't think so. I think that was quite wonderful. Any other questions?
So all I would ask is, I want to make sure people know where to follow you. If you want to be followed, I know you're an artist.
Sure. My website is terrifriedman.com, TerriFriedman.com. And so that usually has everything on it. My Instagram is Terri Friedman _studio.
Yeah, which is so awesome. People have to check it out. I'll put it in the show notes too, the link, but so many really awesome pieces. I want to see them in person.
Thank you.
But the photos are amazing. So
maybe I'll have a show in Chicago sometime. We'll see.
Yes.
That would be fun. Actually, I'd love that. Yeah.
That would be so great. All right, Terri. Well, thank you so much for your time and your pearls of wisdom and just sharing your work with us. I'm so grateful and really, really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.